Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. We are now in season 6 with over 2,500 videos and are viewed and heard around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome an accomplished marketer from India, Mr. VV Rajan. Raj, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Raj is a marketing consultant and an author. So, Raj, let me start with my first question. Tell me about your own amazing journey in brief.
First of all, Ashutosh, thank you so much for inviting me over here. It's really a pleasure and an honor at the same time
Thank you.
to be talking to you and sharing my experiences. My name is Rajan, and I'm based in Bangalore. I'm a Mumbaiker by heart, but
Hmm.
otherwise, I'm settled in Bangalore. My journey started off, in Bombay when I used to work in those days with Bharat Dabholkar and his agency,
Hmm.
Zen Communications, and then I got a call from Middle East to be working with McCann, so
Hmm.
I just couldn't say no to it, and it was a new experience for me to be, going to a country and then experiencing a new culture and new way of life and everything.
Right.
So I just took a shot and then I went over there. And for over 9 years, I worked with the McCann in Middle East,
Hmm.
managing McDonald's and Nestle, BMW, and then many banking brands and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So it was an amazing journey to be, working, and then to be given a huge responsibility of managing the entire, McDonald's account for the
Hmm.
MENA region, the Middle East and North
Right.
Africa region.
Hmm.
So, and then I came back, back to India. I was a consultant for a couple of years. And then that's when I realized, Bangalore is a good place, not just in terms of weather, but also in
Hmm.
terms of market for, advertising professionals such as me. So
Right.
I came back to Bangalore. I worked over there, and then one thing led to another. Then I got into a teaching profession. I was an academician for a couple of years. I used to manage the executive MBA program at Dayal University. Again, an amazing experience, a
Hmm.
very satisfying experience, I would say.
Yeah.
And then, for some reason, I had to, again change path as such. And then now here I am as a marketeer,
Fantastic.
and actually, my authoring this thing, I always wanted to be, writing books and authoring books as such. So I think I got a good fortune with my boss where we managed to co-author two books. I'll be talking about that
Yeah.
shortly.
We'll talk
So
about your
that's how
books
I
as
became
well.
an author as such. Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank
yeah.
you. So
Thank
let's
you.
now talk about marketing and branding.
Mhm.
And you've had such an impressive journey between the Middle East and India.
Yeah.
What my first question for you, Raj, is what are some of the key factors in creating
Mhm.
an effective content marketing strategy for a very diverse audience?
Great question, Ashutosh. See, audiences, uh, from what I have experienced, I have worked in Middle East for the longest time and have worked in
Mm.
India as such. The audiences are not vastly different from each other. Okay.
Right.
The only thing we have to know, especially when crafting effective content as such, and which have really worked for me is first things first, irrespective of whatever brand, whatever category, whatever market you're into, you
Mm.
have to understand the audience really well. I mean, when I
Mm.
say really well, the audience should be like your friend, like your kid, for example, or your neighbor. You
Mm.
need to know them that well.
Mm.
This obviously, if you were to further dissect it, you have to understand proper demographics, proper psychographics of that.
Mm.
And then also identify the segment which each of these groups are based, what is their behavior,
Mm.
how do they react to certain things, certain situations. You have to sort of, I mean, you will come to know once you know your audience really well. I mean, when
Mm.
I say audience, it's not just audience. I think to some extent you should know your brand also really well.
Right.
Sometimes marketeers, they really get carried away with lot of noise that's happening around.
Mm.
I have seen this because everybody wants to be in the limelight, right? I mean, so I mean, while it's great, you want to be in the limelight, you are looking at the end result. The
Mm.
process to achieve that end result is really, really critical. So
Mm.
many things, understand the audience really well, which we just spoke about,
Mm.
understand your own brand as, really well. Understanding the competition also is really, really, really
Correct.
important.
Well
When you
said.
understand, when you understand the competition, you know where do you stand, what are your drawbacks, what are the gaps in the market, and how
Mm.
you can address it,
Mm.
which is where it leads to the next point, which is personalization. When you understand the gaps in the market, when you understand your brand really well, you can personalize your content, your communication really well, and
Mm.
hence you can, then you have to make the content in such a way that it's very agnostic. So depending on whether you take it offline or you take it online, you can
Mm.
customize you can personalize the content in that format.
Mm.
And let's not forget that, India or Middle East, let's be very sensitive to the cultural nuances of wherever you are.
Mm.
Like for example, a small word you add into, your communication may make or break the communication completely.
Correct.
What works in Bangalore definitely will not work in Chennai, will not work in Mumbai, and
Can
so
you
on
give
and
me an
so
example of a word which may create a problem?
on. Um,
If not, leave it. I just thought.
No, I'm just trying to think hard.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. If we take Pepsi as a brand, I mean, it just struck my mind. I always used to wonder back
Mm.
in Middle East. Pepsi still has one of the other brand within the Pepsi portfolio is a brand called Shani.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mixed fruit, aerated drink.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, good I remembered this because I was trying to find example within Bangalore and Bombay and Chennai and all that I couldn't find, but this is a great example. Shani, we never use the word Shani, whether you're from north, south, east,
Correct.
or whatever. We all culturally know that that word has nothing positive associated with that.
Mm.
So that brand was never launched in India, but
Mm.
then that brand has something, that brand is exists in Middle East and it's doing pretty well.
Mm.
Of course, to each its own. The taste is very different as such. It's a mixed fruit, it's a carbonated drink. Pepsi can never launch that in India, but they may launch it with a different brand name or
Correct.
something like that.
Yeah.
So I think you need to understand the cultural sensitivity in that sense is what I'm talking about. That is about a
Absolutely.
brand.
What a great response. I agree
Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
Completely. And there are, the market is littered with the,
yeah.
brands who use the wrong word and
Absolutely,
then were
absolutely.
not able to,
Yeah,
perform well.
yeah,
Moving on, Raj, this is the age of digital.
yeah.
And there is a lot of integration going on between traditional
Hmm.
marketing and digital strategies.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd love to get your perspective on how has the evolution of digital platforms
Hmm.
influenced marketing strategy?
Could you just repeat the question?
How has the evolution of the digital
Hmm.
platforms
Hmm.
influenced marketing strategies for brands?
Actually, a lot. I
Hmm.
mean, today, I mean, I still consider myself really old school in that sense because for me, touch, feel, experience is more important, not just as a consumer, but also as a marketer.
Hmm.
Okay. But I guess with time, with age, with evolution of the media and the
Hmm.
consumer itself, whom we typically target and all that, I also have evolved as a marketer. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think, now digital precedes, your offline, not just consumption, but
Hmm.
also in terms of how you represent your brand digitally,
Hmm.
has taken a very forward leap compared to how it used to happen back in the old days. Because,
Right.
back in the old days, in the advertising days, we always used to think TV first and newspaper first. And then whatever you crack the idea around it, then you
Hmm.
take it outside and then put
Hmm.
it onto how it will appear on a radio, how it will look on a outdoor. Now it's not like that. Now you think digital, and then you basically go back and then see how I can retrofit or how I can seamlessly take it into other forms of media as such.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I say digital, of course, your audio visual would definitely take a lot of precedence and all that.
Mm.
So I think to answer to loop back to your question, I think digital has given is giving us a choice to make it
Mm.
a more enhanced targeting and personalization of
Right.
your overall marketing strategies as such.
Mm.
The other thing very important is, with digital, we can actually do a real-time analytics and adapt to, whatever the outcomes of the strategy are,
Correct.
like for example, I can launch a campaign on digital like
Mm.
now, and then maybe by afternoon, I can fine-tune the campaign in such a way
Mm.
that, it will follow the trend that's currently happening.
Mm.
So it's that real time. I probably can't do that on a print, because once it goes to print, you can't do that.
Correct.
You can't really, it's not a reversible process as such,
Mm. Mm.
with digital, there is an increased enhancement and engagement opportunities as such,
Mm.
which I think, also the generation that we are into right now and the current situation that we are into, everybody wants a validation as such.
Right.
So, whenever you put your brand and your communications out there, it helps you to, validate whether it's, is it in the right direction.
Mm.
So which is why engagement is of utmost criticality when it comes to that. So
Mm.
digital allows you to do that.
Well
Like,
said.
comment, share, like we see,
No, well
is
said.
very critical in your campaign.
Mm.
I mean, it is also cost effective because you can track your ROI through digital. And of course, with the rise of digital platforms, which has really led to, greater emphasis on content marketing,
Mm.
brands really create valuable and relevant content which can
Mm.
attract and retain customers. So content
Mm.
marketing expansion also has become huge,
Mm.
with digital, with the digital, becoming so big. I mean,
Well said.
post-COVID, we all know that how big digital has really
Correct.
become. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
But therefore, a logical next question for you,
mm,
Raj, is
mm,
that given the amount of or the number of digital platforms that
yeah,
exist,
mm,
from a marketer's perspective or from a brand's perspective,
yeah.
how do they maintain consistency in messaging across so many different platforms?
Um, I think, irrespective, Ashutosh, irrespective of, whatever the scenario one is currently. I mean,
Mm.
today it's digital, tomorrow it could be something else.
Yeah.
We don't know. So I think a brand should have a very clear, well-defined brand guideline, and
Mm.
this is the job and the responsibility of the people, of
Mm.
the custodians who are managing the brand. Okay,
Mm.
so you have to create a very strong and comprehensive brand guideline, which covers, of course, the visual elements, the tone of voice, the messaging. So when I say tone of voice, messaging, visual, irrespective whatever situation you are put into, whatever media, whatever trends that are currently happening,
Mm.
you should be able to adapt all these things and leverage the strengths of your brand,
Mm.
in that context over there.
Mm.
You should have a centralized content management. Like for example, let me give this example to you. Imagine a brand which, typically what happens is, when you talk about large brands, okay, I don't want to give any names
Mm.
over
Mm.
here,
Absolutely. Don't need names
but
at all.
large brands I have seen is they first think in Hindi,
Mm.
okay, because by and large, it's a Hindi speaking nation as such, by
Mm.
and large.
Mm.
So you basically construct the entire campaign in Hindi, and then you then retrofit into a Karnataka, into a Tamil Nadu market and
Mm.
all that.
Mm.
But sometimes, many a times, even today, I mean, we are so far in terms of, so ahead in terms of scientific exploration of the brand and stuff like
Right.
that. Okay, a lot of science goes behind, understanding the audience, their behavior, and everything. But when it comes to the actual execution, I still see, no synergies between the brand in terms of what it stands for,
Mm.
what it is trying to talk to a Hindi audience, and the same brand is talking a very different language when it comes to maybe a Tamil or a Kannada and stuff like that.
Mm,
So
mm,
I think you should have a centralized content management.
mm.
When I say that, the brand assets, ensuring that everybody understands it very well from the point of view of the end consumer,
Right.
irrespective wherever they are from. So
Mm,
that's very important. I think regular training and updates
mm.
is really critical, both for the brand custodians and also for the partners who are helping you achieve that. Okay,
Mm,
and then
mm,
of course you need to have a very consistent visual identity also for the
mm.
brand, which means if you, of course, it's all there in the brand book. You construct there
Yeah.
everything in the brand book. Logos, the colors, the fonts. You can't use a very different font in a print vis-a-vis an outdoor, for example.
Mm,
So consistency is of real critical over here, and you
mm,
need to have a unified tone and messaging, irrespective of
mm.
whichever
Very
platform
well
or
said. Well said.
media you are there. Yeah.
Well said. So moving on, you also worked across the entire MENA region.
Yeah.
We just spoke about culture. We've spoken about technology. I
Yeah.
want to now move to getting your expert inputs for startups. You
Hmm.
know, a lot of startups in our country. We are, I think, the second
Yeah.
or the third largest startup nation
Yeah.
in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
What are some of the key elements, in your view, are
Hmm.
important for a go-to-market strategy for a startup?
Um, Important elements. Um, I think uh, the first thing I would begin with is, have a thorough research of whatever I'm trying to do,
Mm,
whatever I'm trying to build, whatever I'm trying to understand from a market perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a
mm,
consumer perspective, and from a competition perspective.
mm,
So research. I think like the saying goes, if you keep sharpening your nail
mm,
for let's say 90% of the time, the 10% of the time is all you need to actually cut the tree or
mm,
something like that.
mm,
So I
mm,
think research accounts for 90% of your time that you have to really invest on. When I say research, everything's including your own brand, your market, like we discussed just a while ago.
mm,
Have a clearly defined value proposition so that the startup, sets apart itself from the competition and addresses the main consumer point,
mm,
the main consumer pain points as such.
mm,
I think if you're able to understand the consumer pain point, you will be able to automatically come with the consumer insight, which is the consumer pain point, obviously, and
mm,
then construct a proper solution to do that. And
mm,
I think if your product is really good, then I think half the battle is really won.
mm,
Many a times I have seen, startups. I also consult with a few startups. I have seen that, while the idea is great, let's let's go out and launch it and stuff like that. So I think you need to take a step back to actually make sure that the product is really good and it is ready for the market. I think that's
mm,
the right word. It should be ready for the market. It cannot be 50% ready. It cannot be 60% ready.
mm,
It has to be 95% or more ready to be able. So only then, the consumers will be able to react to what you're trying to put out there. You
mm,
know,
mm.
and yes, I mean, target audience identification is really key over here.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Not just chase numbers or large numbers. If you're able to identify the target audience, even a small fraction of it of your audience, and then if you're able to help them convince them, saying that yes, this has been your pain point for such a long time.
Mm,
I'm here to help you fix it. I'm here to help you in the long run to help to address your pain point, and hence I'm
mm,
coming out with this. If you're getting a great feedback from there,
mm.
it should be a starting point, and then
Well
uh,
said.
you should be able
Well
to.
said. So one more question relating to
Yeah.
marketing, and then I want to move to your books.
Yeah.
Given your amazing experience across so many different businesses and brands and the countries,
Yeah.
what is the most unexpected lesson you have learned
Hmm.
in your marketing career?
Um, wow. Um, I mean, everybody has a different, really, I mean, marketing is so vast, and
Absolutely.
the marketing experiences are so vast. Me
Correct.
to other any other person,
Hmm.
for that matter. I think what I have really learned, Ashutosh, is that every marketing team. I mean, I would not single out anybody, but every marketing team has a great idea, waiting to be launched. Okay.
Correct.
It's a great thing. It's
Hmm.
really a great thing. But ultimately, what really matters
Hmm.
is how you execute it. And so it's not just the planning stage that sets you apart from the competition.
Hmm.
You have to, make sure that the execution is flawless. You know, that's what would really give you the edge compared
Hmm.
to your competition, and which is why
Hmm.
today, a Unilever is what it is. Your Red Bull. I mean, my favorite brand is
Hmm.
what it is. It's all in the execution. They have the idea, of course. They have a great team, and also execution aside, of course, very critical. I think detailing, the devil lies in the details, like they say. You have to have a great eye for detail in terms of how you execute it flawlessly. So that's
Hmm.
one thing which I've really learned,
Very
and then
interesting.
it really takes a time and experience for you once you are into the marketing profession. So it takes decades of experience to actually come to that. But I think that is something, it's an internal thing where you have to chase the details, you have to chase the execution to the T.
That's it.
That is point number one. Lesson number one I have learned. It also takes a village to raise a child.
Hmm.
Like, it's an age old, sort of a proverb. Similarly, in marketing team, it's not Rajan who's done the great work. It is his team which he has collaborated and put together and brought together, which has come together, and that's what has given me and my team the success. I cannot, for sure, I cannot take it for myself. I would take it for the team that I have worked over for so many years.
Hmm.
And one thing I have realized is, and I have seen it across my years as, this side of the table where I was an agency partner with many brands, is that, when you take the credit, you have to give the credit to your agency
Yeah,
and your partners
understandable.
as well.
Absolutely
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I want to now move to your book, Raj.
yeah,
You've written your books on general management and marketing.
yeah.
Tell me about your books in brief, and also wanted
Mhm,
to ask you, how has your experience as a short story writer
mhm.
influenced your marketing content?
Great. So I'll answer the first one. So I wrote two books. See, because I wrote these books while during my tenure, with Dhanansagar Sagar University as a professor over there, and I continue to teach over there as such.
Hmm.
So we have seen that the whole idea, the whole concept of studying, reading, is sort of going away. Because we are so used to our phones, keeping it in our hand 24/7. We thought we should come out with some material
Hmm.
which could help. It was mainly written for our students, but then it was so well received by the students. We thought we will launch it also on Amazon and
Hmm.
in Kindle and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
the first book was, it's a marketing handbook where it's a 20-day book where we give you tips on how you identify your traits, how do you identify the positives that you have, and how you shape your life and your career and mold yourself towards
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So it gives a lot of step by step things. So every day you're supposed to identify a point which is written in the book, and then follow that, and by the end of 20 days, you're able to identify yourself and come out with, it's more like a SWOT analysis of yourself, and then hence identify what are your career goals and where you
Right.
need to take it forward and all. So that was the first book. The
Hmm.
second one was, it's a marketing handbook. So this was mainly written for students from an interview point of view. When students are going for an interview, a marketing student, a lot of things are asked to the student. A lot of words, jargons are thrown at in random by the team, back to the students. So if the student were to, face a panel as such, this book would really help them to identify, how to look at marketing from various angles.
Mm.
So we researched a lot of areas. I'm just taking random names over here. We researched into retail management, for example, digital marketing. We even looked at rural marketing, for example. Modern marketing techniques. A lot of things we looked into. What are the various jargons people use in all these places? Um, and then every single word. So we listed down over 2,500 or 3,000 plus marketing jargons that are constantly used in day to day marketing parlance
Hmm.
between two people when they're talking to each other. So if a student has gone through this book, a student of marketing, we all are students of marketing. Even I can use it today because I may not know a lot of
Understand. Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
So this particular book helps you achieve that goal. And
Wonderful.
when you are there in a panel, hopefully you'll be able to talk a lot of
Yeah.
sense about marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Uh,
yeah, you want to tell me
yeah.
about short
Yes.
stories that you write?
Yeah, so I watch a lot of films, okay, not just the typical Bollywood masala Hindi films as such. I watch a lot of films, which is the world cinema as you call it. So whether it's a Turkish film or whether it's
Yeah.
a Japanese film, and I'm very intrigued by the culture, the nuances, and the storytelling format how they use. And then it all starts with a simple idea, and then you make that into a film. Yeah.
Sure.
Um, I think pretty much marketing also is like that. Once you have an idea of your consumer, once you have an idea of your competition, the market, what people are generally watching today, and all that, and then you try to come out with a single most idea, which you can use it for your marketing campaigns as such. So, short story writing, or I would say story writing as such, also follows a similar pattern. So I have I use it from that point of view where if I have a single most idea which is very relevant, which is very different from what others have spoken about, and then I use it into creating and curating communication and content.
Okay.
So I use that particular idea into marketing, and then hence with my team and whoever I'm collaborating with, I give them
Wonderful.
that idea and tell them this is how we want to take this idea and discussion forward.
Wonderful. On that note, Raj, thank you so much for speaking to
Thank you.
me. It's been an amazing conversation. We went
Thank you.
to considerable depths on different aspects of marketing and branding. Thank you also for speaking to me about your books. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.